Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Learn English, and today we'll be continuing with part 2 Around the World in 80 Days, where we will be completing all the question answers and also the explanation of plot, theme and synopsis. Stay tuned. Jules Gabriel Verne, who lived from 1828 to 1905, was a French novelist, poet and playwright. Verne wrote widely popular series of adventure novels including The Journey to the Center of the Earth in 1864, 20,000 Leagues in 1870 and Around the World in 1873. Verne is generally considered a major author in France and most of Europe, and he is the second most translated author in the world, and he is the author for the novel Around the World in 80 Days, which is written in the year 1873. Characters. As discussed in part 1, the major characters is Phileas Fogg, who was a wealthy gentleman, Passepartout, his valet, Auda, the lady they met in India, and Detective Fix, who was following Phileas Fogg, suspecting him of a bank robber. The minor characters are Sir Francis Comrati, John Bunsby, the Reform Club members, the Parsi Guide, Colonel Stamp Proctor, Mr. Caramfield, Mr. Mandy Boy, Elder William Hitch, Mudge, and Captain Speedy. So these are the character details of Phileas Fogg, who was a wealthy gentleman at the age of 40. He was an extremely meticulous man who thrives on routine. He was very punctual, determined to win the bet. He was practical and he travels light. He was calm and collected, never panicked, in spite of many adversities they faced. On the other hand, we have Passepartout, who was John Passepartout, who was a newly hired butler to Mr. Phileas Fogg. Somewhat minors Fogg's characteristics of being precise. He is contented and eager to please his master Phileas Fogg. He is protective of Fogg and defends his honor. He is trustworthy and he could be trusted with Fogg's money. Detective Fix. He was a short man with small eyes and bushy eyebrows. A detective who's hot on the trail of Fogg's, whom he thinks robbed the Bank of England. He's persistent and he's materialistic, who follows Fogg around the world only because there's a reward. Auda. She is a Persian Indian princess who was rescued by Passepartout and Fogg. She shares the adventure with Passepartout and Fogg and is grateful for the kindness extended to her. She takes care of Fogg and Passepartout, but later on comes to love Fogg. Theme of the lesson Around the World in 80 Days. So this theme is on the novel, which is full of adventure and excitement right from the beginning to the end. Phileas Fogg, the major character in the novel, accepts the challenge to go around the world in 80 days and accomplishes the feat by going through various lands and meeting with diverse adventures. This novel moves at a fast pace and is always some excitement resulting from the various encounters. The most important feature of this adventure novel is time. It illustrates repeatedly that time is fickle and either works for or against them. In many cases, time foils their plan. When the delays build up and the ship and train leave without them, that sometimes land the characters in trouble. In the end, Fogg wins the bet as he gained a day when crossing the international date line. The ultimate message is that no one can control time. Time will work the way it wants to work and humans are at its mercy. So this important feature of time is actually very important, student, and it is one of your answers. So therefore, please underline this entire important feature of the adventure, which is time, and how time is important is mentioned in this extract. So now we will be discussing how his life, Phileas Fogg's life, was before the journey started. So before the journey started, his life was full of solitary, and he was very closed and cared very little about people. But by the end of the trip, he recognizes the importance of human connection, both in form of love with Auda and friendship and loyalty with his valet Passepartout. Above all, this new understanding and appreciation is the greatest thing he has gained from this trip. Though he has the opportunity to double his fortune, Fogg's motivation is to embark on such a crazy adventure and has nothing to do with the money. He wants to preserve his honor and prove his worth to the men of the Reform Club. So Fogg spends nearly all the money along the way, showing that riches are not what he truly is out for, but what is more important than money is his honor. Throughout the entire trip, Fogg and his group encounters various obstacles that come across their way. These challenges allow them to use their quick thinking and innovative solutions to even the most complicated problems, relaying the message that no problem is unsolvable. It is only Fogg who shows his clever wit in coming up with solutions. Passepartout in turn also shows multiple situations and shows ingenuity in multiple situations. Plot of the novel Around the World in 80 Days. Around the World in 80 Days begins at the Reform Club in England with Phileas Fogg and his friends who are sitting at a fireplace reading newspaper. We are introduced to Fogg as a very precise man who regularly visits Reform Club every evening. At the Reform Club, all his friends along with Phileas Fogg are talking about a recent bank robbery. This conversation leads to a wager. A wager means a bet. Fogg is quite sure he can travel around the world in 80 days, while his friend John Sullivan doesn't believe it can be done. So Sullivan and all his friends in the Reform Club think Fogg is not considering the unexpected. All of the men accept the wager of £20,000. So this is the beginning of the entire plot, from when we see Fogg goes around the world and we witness the amazing adventures that he has with his companion. The main plot is based on Fogg's travel, while the other plots merely support the central theme. Fix the detective follows Fogg all over because he thinks that he's the bank robber from the Bank of England who has robbed the money. And Fix the detective puts a lot of obstacles in Fogg's path so that he can get arrested whenever he gets the warrant from England. The suspicion that Fogg might be a clever gentleman robber is the sub-theme of the book, and the author makes the reader also very suspicious. Passepartout also wonders that whether his master might be the robber, though in his heart he has ample trust in Fogg's integrity. The plot moves ahead with Fogg striving through various obstacles to reach London in time. He goes through Brisbane, Suez, Bombay, Calcutta, Hong Kong, Yokohama, San Francisco, New York, and finally reaches Liverpool, and Fix arrests Fogg at Liverpool and delays Fogg a bit. He thinks that he has missed the deadline and hasn't reached London in time, when in reality he actually has one full day left with him. Thus, Fogg in the end wins the wager, and in the course of his travel finds himself a worthy, charming, beautiful wife too. Synopsis of the extract. So as Fogg, Auda and Passepartout arrive in Liverpool, Detective Fix arrests Fogg and throws him in jail. Several hours later, when Detective Fix learns that another man was responsible for the bank robbery, he releases Fogg. Fogg then orders a special train. However, he arrives in London late, making everyone disappointed. Felice and company are now broke and the deadline for the bet has passed and there is nothing to do but go home and pout. Felice locks himself in his room and for the first time allows himself to be seriously depressed. Auda and Passepartout are so worried that they too can't sleep or eat. The following evening, Fogg apologizes to Auda for being unable to provide for her comfort as a result of losing the bet. She in turn proposes marriage to him and he joyfully agrees. He sends out Passepartout to engage a clergyman. He runs off to get a reverend to marry Fogg and Auda the next day, which they all think is Monday. While running to grab the nearest preacher to marry Felice and Auda, Passepartout finds out that it is actually Sunday and not Monday. By traveling eastward around the world, Phileas Fogg, who was the master calculator and obsessive organizer, has forgotten the time he has gained by journeying through all the time zones. He learns that their journey through the time zones has given them a day and they are not late at all. Passepartout races home and grabs Felice by the collar, shoves him into a cab and deposits him at the club. Felice presents himself with minutes to spare and effectively wins the bet. He is rich once again, but most importantly, he has also won the heart of a charming, beautiful woman, Auda. This is the itinerary of Phileas Fogg's journey as originally planned. He moves from London to Suez by rail and a steamer, crossing the Mediterranean Sea within 7 days. From Suez to Bombay by a steamer, crossing the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, which takes approximately 13 days. From Bombay to Calcutta by a railway. From Calcutta to Victoria, Hong Kong. In Singapore by the steamer the Rangoon, which crosses the South China Sea, which approximately takes 13 days. Hong Kong to Yokohama, which is in Japan, by the steamer, which crosses the South China Sea, East China Sea and the Pacific Ocean, which approximately takes 6 days. From Yokohama, he travels to San Francisco, which is in United States, with the help of a steamer, which crosses the Pacific Ocean and takes exactly 22 days. From San Francisco to New York City, which is in the United States, by a railway, which takes 7 days. From New York to London, with the help of a steamer that crosses the Atlantic Ocean to Liverpool, which takes 9 days. So total of 80 days journey completed from London to London. Coming to brainstorming, question number 1 regarding character. Which one of the following is not a major character of the novel? Justify. The answer is James Strand because he's not the major character. He is actually the bank robber who robbed the money from the Bank of England. The major character of the novel is Phileas Fogg. Complete the table highlighting the various traits of the major characters in the extract. First one, Phileas Fogg. So, after learning the story of part 1 and part 2 and reading about the characteristic details of Mr. Phileas Fogg, we know that he's determined, he's very honorable, he's an eccentric English gentleman, he has the thirst for exploration, he's open-minded, he has a moral conduct, he's fearless, brave and adaptable. The next character traits of Auda, who's charming and beautiful, brave, adaptable, optimistic, cheerful, firm, sweet, and steadfast. The third one, Passepartout, who is the valet and a newly hired butler to Fogg. His character traits are honest, comical, soft-spoken, innocent, obedient, clever, conscious, loyal, selfless, and also impulsive. This is a very important characteristic of being impulsive, because you have a question related to how impulsive John Passepartout was as compared to his master Phileas Fogg. Phileas Fogg is as cool as a cucumber, whereas Passepartout is as crazy as a loon. Explain the statement by citing some references from the extract. So, when Phileas Fogg was arrested, he was sitting motionless, calm, and without any anger. He was about to complete the challenge of traveling around the days in 80 days. He was just few hours away from his final destination. Having arrived at Liverpool at 20 minutes before 12 on the 21st of December, he still had 9 hours and a quarter, and the journey from Liverpool to London was only 6 hours. However, the arrest that took place following the reach at Liverpool proved to be fatal. He seemed to resign from the entire situation. There he sat calmly waiting for the ordeal to end. So he is cool like a cucumber. However, on the other hand, Passepartout was extremely unstable, volatile, and when he saw his master arrested, he had a fall upon Fix that he could not be held back by some policemen. He thought that because of Passepartout himself that he was the cause of all this misfortune. He thought to himself that he shouldn't have concealed Fix's errands from his master. He thought, now seeing his master arrested, he feels very bad and miserable. He should have told Mr. Fogg when Fix revealed his true character and purpose. If Mr. Fogg had been warned, he would have done something to prove his innocence, and satisfied him of his mistake. At least, Fix would not have continued his journey at the expense and on the heels of his master, only to harass him at the moment he set foot on the English soil. Passepartout wept till he was blind and felt like blowing his brains out. Therefore, the above incident of concealing the identity of the detective and thereby placing him in the jeopardy of losing his bet proves that Passepartout was as crazy as a loon. Question number 4. Detective Fix tried hard but could not fix the charge of robbery on Fogg. Explain the statement from the point of view of Fix. So here in this question we know that Phileas Fogg was a prosperous Londoner who kept to himself most of all the time. There was not a lot known about him or his private life other than that he was focused, specific, systematic. Fix the detective followed Fogg wherever he went, suspecting him to be a robber. To make his suspicion true, that evening Phileas was at his men's club when people were discussing about the bank robbery that had occurred recently. The men with Fogg began discussing where the thief could flee, some saying the world is too small while the others too big. Phileas said that the world has become small and that one could travel the world in 80 days. As soon as he left, his bet was projected all over the newspapers. People started betting on whether or not he will make it on time. Regrettably for Fogg, his secret history caused him to become suspect number 1 as to the bank robbers. Detective Fix was set out after him to bring him back as soon as possible. Fix managed to find Fogg when Passepartout asked him to aid to see the consulate. As Phileas only heeded about the bet, he never took the time to look at the places he was passing through. Instead, he preferred staying inside his room. So Fix was trying to get more information as to whether or not Phileas was the robber. He used Passepartout, asking him a lot of questions about Phileas. but with every answer he became more convinced that it must be him. With Detective Fix, he was trying to remedy or fix the situation in catching the bank robbers and returning the money. He also created a lot of fix for Fogg as his constant interference caused issues for the adventure. In fact, one could even say he was trying to fix the situation as he wanted to bring Felice back to London, warranting that he lost the bet. But unfortunately, the robbers were caught in time, and so Fogg was released as soon as he was proven innocent. Describe the character sketch of Auda from Fogg's point of view. Auda, according to Fogg, was a very beautiful woman who was captured and was in trouble of going sati as she lost her husband. Fogg and his comrades happen to see her being led through the jungle by a procession of Brahmin and decide that they must save her from being sacrificed. With the help of Passepartout, Fogg decides to bring her along on the remainder of his trip and back to England, when they learn that the relative she planned to stay with in Hong Kong has moved away. Throughout the rest of their travel, Auda feels indebted to her companions for saving her and gradually falls in love with Fogg. At the end of the novel, she returns to London with Fogg and asks him to marry her, even though they believe he has lost the wager, thus his entire fortune. He accepts and tells her that he loves her too. After Fogg does win the wager at the last moment, he and Auda are married. Fogg finds Auda to be a very soft-spoken, compassionate, and trustworthy companion. After Fogg is released from prison, he approaches her and accepts her proposal to marry her. In a way, their marriage reveals the actual date, so he realizes he has time to reach the club and win the money. Question 2. First one. Plot. Arrange the incident in correct sequence as per their occurrence in the extract. The first one, as a part of duty, Fix arrested Fogg. Second one, when set free, first thing that Fogg did was he knocked Fix down. Third, Auda accepts Fogg's proposal of marriage. Fourth one, at the 57th second, Fogg entered the room. Reform Club soon. There is a sudden twist in the climax of the novel, explained by citing some lines and relevant examples from the extract. So the sudden twist and the climax of the novel is when Passepartout approached the clergy for the date, he realizes it was actually a Saturday. Thus, there is a twist in the tale. Phileas Fogg accomplished the journey around the world in 80 days, and therefore he won £20,000. How did the man who was so exact and fastidious could have made this error of a day? How can he think he arrived in London on Saturday, the 21st day of December, when really it was Friday? The above lines explain the change in a time zone which helped them save time and reach their destination one day before they planned. So these are all the twists, the sudden twists and the climax explained in the novel, which shows some citing and relevant examples. Question 3. Which of the following is an appropriate reason for Phileas Fogg starting his journey around the world? The correct answer is fellow members bet Fogg. Question number 3. Setting. Which of the following are used as a means of transport in the novel? How do they help the characters in the extract? A. Elephant, B. Horse, C. Train, D. Steamer. The answer is all of these help the characters Mr. Fogg, Felice, Mr. Passepartout, and Miss Auda to reach the destination ahead. Question 2. The beginning of the extract is a scene in the prison at the custom house. From there, the novel moves further from one place to another. Pick and explain all the places where the incident took place. The most of the part of the setting of in the extract is in London. Explain how the setting of the extract is suited to the theme of the novel. So the first part or the first spot where Felice was taken was the custom house. Phileas Fogg was detained in the custom house and he was to be transferred to London the next day. The second place or the spot is Liverpool. Phileas had arrived at Liverpool at 20 minutes before 12 on the 21st of December. The journey from Liverpool to the Reform Club, where he was supposed to meet his friends, was 6 hours. But unfortunately he was stuck in custom house due to a false robbery charge on Fogg by Fix. Fogg was arrested at Liverpool. The third spot or place was London, where after his release Mr. Fogg arranged to travel by an express train to London by handsomely rewarding the engineer. A special train got Fogg along with Auda and his faithful valet to London. But as he stepped from the train at the terminus, all the clocks in London were striking 10 minutes before 9. Having made the tour of the world, he was behind by 5 minutes and thought that he had lost the wager. The fifth spot was Salve Row. He returned home instead of going to the Reform Club, as he was under the impression that he had lost the bet. He gave instruction to Passepartout to purchase some provisions and went to his domicile. The air at Salve Row was very grim, adding to the misery. The valet found the gas bill and discovered that it was burning for 80 days. The last spot was the Reform Club, where his friends waited for him and even tried to trace him. They were not aware of his return to Salve Row. As they waited, with bated breath, thinking Fogg wouldn't make it on time to complete the challenge, at the 57th second the door of the saloon opened and the pendulum had not beat the 60th second when Fogg appeared, followed by an excited crowd. Question 3. Describe the importance of the following places in the development of the plot and behavior of the characters. First one, Liverpool. Liverpool was second, but the final destination before Mr. Fogg could meet his friends in the Reform Club. Fogg reached Liverpool at 20 minutes before 12 on the 21st of December. The second place is London, where Mr. Fogg arrives by arranging a special train by bribing an engineer with a handsome reward. As he stepped on the platform, he saw that all the clocks struck 10 minutes to 9 and thought that he had lost the bet. The third place is the Reform Club, where the story and the journey around the world started at the Reform Club with 5 of his friends and Mr. Fogg accepting the wager for £20,000. We can say that Around the World in 80 Days begins at Reform's Club in England with Phileas Fogg, Fallagin, Fallentin and Sullivan laying the bet. This is the beginning of the entire plot. Fourth, Salve Row. Fogg lived in solitary life in Salve Row before his journey around the world. He closed himself off to others and cared little about what people thought of him. After his journey he stepped back to his domicile, Salve Row, with his new companion Auda and his valet Passepartout. The house in Savile Row defines the reticence and withdrawal personality. Last place is Edinburgh, where the real bank robber James Strand was arrested on the 17th December, 3 days before Fogg had been a criminal, who was being desperately followed by the police and now an honourable gentleman mathematically pursuing his eccentric journey around the world. The transformation in Fogg's image was owing to the popular arrest that occurred in Edinburgh. Question number 4. Select the current options. Which of the following places in India are not mentioned in the extract of the novel? The places which are mentioned are Bombay and Calcutta, and the places which are not mentioned is Chennai and Allahabad. So the correct answer is Chennai and Allahabad. Question number 4 on theme. The first one, explain and find the significance of various exciting incidents in the extract. The various incidents are as follows. Incident 1, where Phileas Fogg and his friends Valentine, Sullivan are sitting at the fireplace in the Reform Club in England, accepted the wager for £20,000 as they challenge Fogg, who strongly considers that one can complete a journey around the world in 80 days. Incident 2, Fogg is ready to embark on his journey with his valet Passepartout. Incident 3, Detective Fix follows Fogg all over as he believes that Fogg is the bank robber who has robbed a great sum of money from the Bank of England. Incident 4, Fix puts obstacle in Fogg's path so that he can arrest whenever he gets a warrant from England. Incident 5, Fogg reaches London in time after travelling to Brisbane, Suez, Bombay, Calcutta, Hong Kong, Yokohama, San Francisco, New York, and finally Liverpool. Incident 6, Fogg meets Auda in India as she happens to be carried to be offered in sati, saves her and thereafter protects her by making her his travel companion. Incident 7, he reaches Liverpool only to be arrested for a robbery he never committed. Incident 8, out from Custom House he catches a train straight to London, reaching 5 minutes late. Incident 9, Fogg proposes Auda and both agree to marry. As Passepartout approaches Reverend Samuel, he realizes the change of date and day and realizes they are on time and also ahead of time. Incident 10, Fogg reaches the club at the 57th minute to 9 and wins the wager. Question number 2, write 4-5 sentences on time theme of the extract. The answer was underlined in red in the previous slide, so that is the answer. I request you to please go through the same. Question number 3, write 4-5 sentences on morality theme of the extract. Mr. Fogg always held up the cudgels to save morality. Fogg's motivation to embark on such a crazy adventure had little to do with money. Instead, he wanted to preserve his honor and prove his worth to the friends at the Reform Club. He wanted to show that he can do what he is set to do. Fogg spends all the money along the way to show his richness. Are not what he is truly out for, but for Phileas Fogg, honor is more important than money. Write the central idea of the given extract of novel Around the World in 80 Days. The central idea of the given extract is that when we set our heart to achieve something, the way gets paved with perseverance and sincere efforts, one can attain success. Throughout the journey, Fogg and his group encounters a lot of obstacles standing their way. But instead of getting bogged down, they utilize the challenge and with sincere deliberations come up with quick solutions. This relays the message that no problem is unsolvable, and that is the central idea of the extract around the world in 80 days. Question number 5. Justice is served / done in the end. Explain. So Mr. Fix suspects Fogg for being a bank robber and follows Fogg and arrests him at Liverpool, due to which Fogg loses a day and thinks he has lost the bet. But soon the real bank robber is caught at Edinburgh and Fogg is freed. After sequences of events, Fogg realizes that his sincerity towards the journey and his ingenuity towards Auda helps him reach the destination. As Passepartout approaches, Reverend Samuel realizes it was Saturday and thus Fogg reaches Reform Club on time. Thus, the author of the novel wants to drive home the simple lesson that sincere efforts and selfless attitude takes is to the success. Justice is indeed served in the end. Question number 5. Language. Elaborate the following quote in the light of the extract of the novel Around the World in 80 Days. First one, quitters never win and winners never quit. The quote and the elaboration from the extract are as follows. There were various obstacles during the journey. However, Fogg, Auda and Passepartout win it all as they were never meant to quit. The time calculation which they gather was mistaken by rushing and reaching the destination in the nick of the hour. Thus, the message is if one sets his heart to achieve, he definitely will. Therefore, the quote, quitters never win and winners never quit. Second one, the quote, time is the only solution to problems can be explained as it is the most important feature of the novel. It illustrates repeatedly that time is fickle and so it either works for or against them. However, in the end, Fogg wins his bet and he gains a day while crossing the international date line. Therefore, the quote, time is the only solution to the problem, which is applicable exactly to the situation in the extract. Question number 2. Following are some dialogues of major characters in the extract. Find out who the speaker is, his or her tone, style, significance, etc. of the dialogue. The first one. Why do you not curse me? It was my fault. The speaker here is Passepartout, who speaks out to Mr. Fogg. The tone here is anxious, uncertain, hopeful that he does not overcome, and he always is nervous. The style is non-arrogant, self-doubt and rhetorical. The significance is friends gathered to decide on wager at 7:23 was the last train checked if Fogg had boarded. Second one, if Phileas Fogg had come in the 7:23 train, he would have got here by this time. We can therefore regard the bet as won. The speaker here is Andrew Stuart, and Andrew Stuart talks to Gauthier Ralph. The tone here is an assertive apologetic tone. The style is commanding, pleasant. The significance is the robber caught at Edinburgh, so Fix releases Fogg. The third one, sir, forgive me, a most unfortunate resemblance robber arrested 3 days ago. You are free. The speaker here is Detective Fix. Detective Fix speaks to Mr. Fogg. The tone is proud, affectionate, anticipated, and asking for pardon. The style is decent approach, factual, gentlemanly, resplendent. The significance is Auda is wealthy, but now, since Fogg thinks he has lost the wager, he is apprehensive if she will marry him. The next one, will you pardon me for bringing you to England? The speaker here is Mr. Fogg, and he speaks to Auda. The tone here is dignified, honorable, victorious, and pride. The style is humble, polite, and self-assertive. The significant is Auda is grateful as Fogg proposes her and claims fortune belong to her, gratitude and loyal. The last one, it is for me to ask that question. You were ruined, but now you are rich again. The speaker here is Auda. Auda speaks to Mr. Fogg. The tone here is dignified, polite, selfless, acknowledging, and magnanimous. The style here is self-assertive, humble, and clairvoyant. The significance here is Fogg gets fortune back. He confirms again with Auda, for which she says, it is for me to ask. Fogg reiterates that fortune belonged to Auda, as if they would not have gone to meet Reverend Samuel Wilson, they wouldn't have been apprised of the error. So, my dear students, we have come to the end of part 2 of the novel Around the World in 80 Days. Your assignment is to read all the chapters from the textbook and also do the brainstorming exercises in your classwork. If you have any doubts regarding part 2, you can post your questions in the comment section or in the WhatsApp. Thank you. Stay updated. Stay safe.